So now that you have a little bit of an understanding of the differences between bacteria and viruses, I'm going to talk about some issues related to bacterial and viral infections. So we're going to be talking about pathogenic bacteria and viruses. So I wanted to give you some of the vocabulary that we use when we talk about bacterial and viral infections. And here we have the words an outbreak, an epidemic, and a pandemic. So I want you to compare those vocabulary words. And here's a picture from your book trying to distinguish among those. So I start off with epidemic. And when we have an epidemic, we're talking about a disease spreading through a population. So an epidemic is talking about a bacterial or viral disease. And it refers to a sudden increase in number of cases in a specific geographic area in a short period of time. So we can say that there is an epidemic of, there's a flu epidemic, or there's a COVID epidemic, or, something, a sudden increase, a tuberculosis epidemic, an Ebola epidemic, a sudden increase in number of cases in a specific area in a short period of time. And what they're trying to show you here is, here we have a population, we're saying the red people are the ones that have this disease and the greens are the healthy ones. Well, they're showing you over a short period of time, we've got a lot more cases. And it happens all the time. We have a seasonal flu epidemic that happens in the US. In between the months of about October and April, we get an increase in the number of cases of flu every year. It's predictable. Other epidemics aren't quite as predictable. Now, related to epidemic, you might hear this word outbreak. And an outbreak is an increased number of cases, but on a smaller scale than an epidemic. So, and you can see here that, there's this many people that have it, and the disease is just kind of switched to some other people got the disease, different people got the disease. But an outbreak would be a smaller case. A lot of times an outbreak is a precursor to an epidemic. So you might see that you had an outbreak of, maybe you got staph infection. There's an outbreak of staph infections, and you want to control it. You want to find out what's happening or where it came from before it becomes an epidemic, before more people get it. You see it with foodborne illnesses a lot. You'll see that there'll be a report that people are getting sick from eating spinach or something, something from the grocery store. There's an outbreak, a foodborne illness outbreak, and you want to control that. You want to find out why, what's causing it before it becomes an epidemic, before it spreads further. Then the last word that we're all familiar with is pandemic. And pandemic refers to a worldwide epidemic. So it's spread. This is something that started off as an outbreak probably, and then an epidemic in a certain region, but now has moved beyond that region to other parts of the world. And so we call a pandemic when we have a disease that has spread worldwide, or it's a worldwide epidemic over a relatively short period of time. I just pulled this out. I don't know how well you can see it. I hope you can, but just to give you an idea of like what epidemics and pandemics and all that how common are these? And they're, pandemics aren't that common. We all know now, the COVID-19 pandemic happened, and I think the size of the circle shows you kind of a relative amount of deaths. So the bigger the circle, the more people that died from that. But we have the COVID-19 pandemic. We had in 2009, you may or may not remember that there was actually a swine flu pandemic, and it kind of came, but it went away pretty quickly. It didn't persist as much as the COVID-19 pandemic. It actually started in Mexico on a pig farm, so that's why it was called the swine flu pandemic. But you can see that there was a pandemic then. It just wasn't as dramatic. Here's an epidemic of SARS. We're going to talk about that in a minute. HIV epidemic, 1981 onwards, with causing HIV and AIDS. the Hong Kong flu pandemic. So look, it's been a long time since we've actually had a pandemic until fairly recently. The biggest, one of the biggest and most notable pandemics kind of in memorable history, in history of, fairly recent history, was the Spanish flu pandemic. And people are always very concerned about that because it killed, I don't even know, 27 million is what they say for COVID. And we're talking about 50 to 100 million and possibly even more since record keeping wasn't so good in those days. But anyway, you can see some of these different pandemics, cholera pandemics and whatnot throughout history. But we don't have these a lot, these great, the big pandemics or even epidemics in the US. I mean, we'll have something here and there, but these are kind of exceptional things. So I want you to understand why influenza epidemics and pandemics occur. And so influenza is the flu the virus that causes the flu. Influenza is the virus that the influenza virus is the virus that causes the flu, and we also call the disease the influenza. It's a respiratory disease. If you ever say, I was really sick, I was throwing up, I got influenza, I had the flu, it probably was something else. Influenza is typically a respiratory disease, although in little kids it can trigger some vomiting. So explain why influenza epidemics and pandemics occur. In fact, before the COVID pandemic, there have been many notable scientists that have been warning us that we're due for an influenza pandemic or other kind of epidemic/pandemic. So these kind of things they're expected to happen. And why is that? Well, first of all, the influenza virus is an RNA virus. Remember, we said viruses can contain RNA or DNA as their genetic material. Cellular organisms only contain DNA. They contain DNA and they make RNA, but viruses can just contain RNA as their main genetic material. Turns out that RNA mutates more easily than DNA. And we talked about mutation in the last chapter, where we said mutations are changes in the genetic material that can result in changes in a protein. So here's an example. Here's a virus, and there's some spikes on the outside. And it says you can have mutations that happen, and mutations are normal. They happen, when cells divide or when you make new viruses. And here they're showing you over time you get an accumulation of mutations, and it can change. They're showing you here these proteins on the spikes in this case. And now this new virus looks different than this old one. So we can have this, it says small mutations each year result in a slightly different virus each year. So every year we have a new flu epidemic. And I put this graph here, and it's just showing you each year the hospitalizations per 100,000 people for influenza. And every year, here's that seasonal flu epidemic. We don't have a lot of flu in the summer, but in those winter months, we get these spikes of cases. And why does that happen every year? Why don't we just get it once and then everybody gets immunity to it? Why do we keep getting it? And that's because influenza viruses are RNA viruses, and they mutate very easily. So when this virus caused disease last year, it's created a new virus over time. And now this virus, we don't have immunity to it. So you can get the flu again. So it kind of creates a different version of the same virus, and it keeps outsmarting our immune system. That makes sense. Remember that viruses are obligate intracellular parasites. They live inside of host cells. So if your immune system starts fighting the virus off, it's got to change in order to infect the cells again. So influenza epidemics and pandemics occur because viruses keep changing. They have RNA, they get mutations easily, and those new mutations help create new viruses. So we can have a flu epidemic every year. Oh, I just wanted to mention, like when we get an influenza vaccine, we don't know what flu's coming next year. We can only make a guess based on what flu is in other parts of the planet. What other countries are having the flu and what hasn't been in the US yet. So typically what they do is they pick 3 different flu viruses, 3 different versions. Here's one, here's another, and they pick a third one, and they put 3 different flu viruses in our vaccines to help us build immunity against them. So there's always a little guesswork in creating a flu vaccine because you have to predict which flu is going to cause the epidemic next year. There's another reason why influenza epidemics and pandemics occur, and it says they can also occur when influenza viruses from one animal mix with a human virus and create a brand new influenza virus. This is why we keep hearing about bird flu in the news. If we look at this, you see how these viruses have these different numbers on them, H1N1. It's just describing what kind of spikes you have on there. But they give viruses names like that. So there's this virus called H1N5. You don't have to remember that name, but that's the bird flu. And 75% of chickens that get bird flu die of it. 50 to 60% of humans that get bird flu die of it, except humans don't usually get bird flu. You have to be working really closely with birds in close contact to get that. So we're not too worried about humans getting bird flu from chickens. But what can happen is if the chicken virus infects a pig, turns out human viruses can also infect pigs. And these 2 viruses can mix together and make a brand new virus. And potentially, you could make a virus that got high mortality from the bird flu and easily infects humans from the human virus. See how this, in some cases, a bird virus and a human virus can both infect pigs. For some reason, bird viruses and human viruses, in this case, influenza viruses, can infect pigs. They can mix together in there, make a brand new virus. Now you've made a virus that easily infects humans and has a high mortality rate. 50% to 60% mortality in a virus that's easily passed from person to person would be devastating. This is one of the big reasons why we're so worried about bird flu, is we don't want to create a super virus that will kill a lot of humans. So this would be a brand new virus. We don't have a vaccine. It's a new virus. We don't have a vaccine. And since nobody's ever seen this virus before, it would be a brand new virus. Nobody has immunity to it. So it has it's got a lot of potential for a pandemic to spread throughout the world very easily. So 2 main ways that we can get influenza viruses causing epidemics and pandemics is just gradual mutations, and that's typically what causes our seasonal flu, or a bird virus mixing with a human virus and creating a brand new super virus that will have high mortality and will infect humans easily. So this is why you hear a lot about influenza virus in the news and tracking bird flu and whatnot. Okay, I'm going to stop right there.